All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first Thursday seminar of the academic year. I'd like to welcome our brand new first year students, most of whom seem to be sitting right here, front and center. Welcome to your first Thursday seminar. I also know there are a number of undergrads in the room also. Tell your friends how cool these seminars are. We have these every Tuesday at lunch, every Thursday at 4. You're all welcome to come. We have treats beforehand. You're welcome to come to those as well. I am not introducing today's speaker. I'm introducing the person who's going to introduce the speaker. But before I do, I just want to say what an honor it is to have this distinguished ecologist visit us. This is someone who reached out to us and said, hey, I have a free plane ticket. I can fly anywhere in the world. Can I come visit you? Because he wanted to be in this department because of our expertise in plant-animal interactions, among many other things. It's also really a treat for me because these two books have been on my shelf since the day they were published, and these are books from him. These are literally the books about ant-plant interactions that he's responsible for. But again, I'm not introducing him. I'm introducing Mariani, his former PhD student, because there's no bigger honor than having one of your former students introduce you.
Well, it's a big responsibility to introduce Paulo, but also my great pleasure to do that as a former student from his lab. So let me start with a bit of context. I first met Paulo when I was an undergrad, specifically a second year student in biology. And in that point, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was completely lost. And I think I was the only person from my cohort who still didn't have a undergrad research project. But everything changed when I started taking classes, ecology classes, with Paulo. By the way, he gave these classes for around 30 years. Well, Paulo is fascinated about every aspect of ecology, and his passion about nature made me decide I want to work with this professor. And importantly, even before knowing his research topics. So at that point, the most important thing for me was not exactly the CV, but I wanted to be working with and be inspired by this brilliant researcher. And we ended up, who today I have the honor to call a mentor. We ended up working together for 12 years. As you can imagine, it's a lot of time. So I had a lot of time to learn different things, ecology, ants. But what I would like to share with you is the 3 main lessons that I've learned with Paulo along these years. So, first, learn how to deal with failure. In this career, the no's are far more common than the yes. So try to see every no as an opportunity to learn and improve. Second, never forget the basics. No matter your research question, keep looking at nature and stay fascinated by the details and the simple ways life works. Feed your curiosity constantly. Keep asking questions no matter how silly you think they are. And finally, and for me the most important advice, have fun. Find a topic that excites you, something that makes you happy. This joy will always remind you why you made your choice at the first place. With that, I hope you all, as I have since I was an undergrad, enjoy Paulo's talk and feel inspired to appreciate the very simple little things that run the world. So please join me in welcoming Professor Paulo Oliveira.
She exaggerated a little bit, but I cannot complain. Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes, let me see this thing. Okay. Should I be here or down?
Anywhere you like.
Okay, I'll be down. Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity to come here and talk about my research on ant behavior and ant ecology that I do in Brazil for over 40 years. What you will hear this afternoon is literally part of 40 years of my research career in Brazil, okay? And the talk today occurs in the Cerrado, which is our savanna, the second greatest biome of Brazil, behind just the Amazon forest. Okay, so this is the Brazilian Cerrados. It occupies nearly 1/4 of Brazil, and it's a beautiful savanna with many physiognomies, ranging from open Cerrado to closed Cerrado, okay? So the Cerrados, in fact, is the Disneyland of the ants. Ants are everywhere in the Cerrado, on the floor and on vegetation. So these are the questions that we will pursue this afternoon. If ants are so common on the foliage of Cerrado, in what way they affect the decisions, the behavioral decisions that flying insects make when they approach foliage. So once they detect ants on foliage, what do they do? What decisions they take? This is the main question of my talk. Okay. Ants are dominant organisms on foliage, as testified here by the work by Jonathan Major from Australia and John Tobin when he worked in Peru. Okay, up to 86% of the arthropod biomass of a tropical rainforest can be accounted to ants. Over 90% of the arthropod individuals that you can count on the canopy are also ants. If this is true, that would be the question. In what way the superabundance of ants on foliage would affect the behavior of flying insects once they detect the presence of ants on foliage? So this is the question that we are pursuing this afternoon. Under two scenarios, when ants can cause injury or predation on the flying insect that is approaching the foliage, or when ants can benefit a flying insect that is approaching the foliage. So these are the things that we are pursuing this afternoon under these two contexts. Okay. So, how foliage foraging ants are perceived from above? Under two scenarios from butterflies. If the relationship is antagonic, where to lay the egg, given that ants can be harmful to the offspring of the gravid butterfly? Where to lay the eggs if the ants can be beneficial to the offspring of the gravid butterfly? So these are the first questions that we are going to pursue. I'm going also to talk about bees. And the question will be, this is a Nectatoma, very aggressive ant, on a Bursonima plant, opening her mandibles fiercely against an approaching bee. So given that you are a bee and you will collect rewards on the from the oil glands of the malpighi, glands in the flower, where to collect flower rewards if ants are there occupying the inflorescence? Okay. So, this is a herd of wildebeest in the African savanna. 4 lionesses are approaching this herd. Since they are our cousins, we kind of have a feeling how they would perceive the presence of the enemy, basically by vision and scent. Okay? This is how they would perceive approaching predators, the 4 lionesses that I show here. But we have a very vague idea of how insects perceive the world and especially perceive the other organisms that they find on foliage. So this is what I will work on today. So as I said, the Cerrado is the Disneyland of the ants, and I cannot imagine a better testimony than this. I can't imagine one. This is what he told me when he came to the Cerrado. Paulo, I felt like a kid in a candy store, because every branch that you break, you have a nest inside. Ants are everywhere on the ground and on foliage. Okay, can't imagine a better testimony than this. Okay, and why ants are so common on foliage of the Cerrado? Because they have liquid rewards from extrafloral nectaries, and because they have liquid rewards from trophobionts that are herbivores that expel nutritious liquids that attract the ants, that have with them a similar relationship that we have with cows, for example. Okay? Okay. I will tell you today 3 stories. One of an antagonistic relationship between a butterfly and ants that occur on foliage, a butterfly that has a mutualistic relationship with the ants on its host plant, and a bee that is harassed by ants on the flowers that it visits. So 2 cases of antagonism and 1 case of mutualism. So let's begin with the first story. So this is Eunica bequina, an invalid butterfly that lay her eggs on young leaves of Cariocar brasiliense, a plant in the Cariocaraceae of Brazil, a very common plant of the Brazilian Cerrados. Okay. Ants are attracted to the nectaries on the petals, on the sepals of the buds. You can see a droplet here. Over 30 ant species visit the plant day and night. Okay. And here what the ants can do to the offspring of this butterfly once they find them on leaves. So there is a high risk of being attacked by ants on this plant. Okay. This is a very important paper by Peter Price in the early 80s, published in Annual Review. And he have this, explores very well this relationship, which shows that, and created the term enemy-free spaces. So a given herbivore should prefer to lay eggs when there is a low probability of predation on the host plant that the herbivore explores. The higher the risk of predation, the lower should be the preference of a herbivore to lay eggs or to visit a plant if there is a high risk of predation. And this is our scenario. The plant, the butterfly that uses Cariocar, whose offspring runs a high risk of predation on the host plant. We should expect, according to Peter Price, some kind of avoidance to diminish the probability of having this encounter on leaves. So this is a very important thing for the graduate students here. Read also other papers not necessarily related to your thesis. So our work with Eunica on Carioca came to our mind based on this fascinating paper by Kathy Williams and Larry Gilbert in Science, where they showed that the butterfly that lays eggs on the passion flower, is that how we call the host plant, right? Passion flower, can see that the plant was previously occupied by another butterfly, detects the presence of the eggs and avoids laying eggs there. And there is a premium for avoiding, because on the host plant there is a high competition for foliage among the caterpillars, and there is the risk of cannibalism. So they showed that heliconius butterflies visually avoid the yellow eggs against the green background and lay eggs on plants that were not previously infested by another butterflies. Okay, I read this thing and I said, the image of ants is very common on Cerrado foliage, most particularly on Carioca, that is visited day and night by over 30 ant species. So is it possible, given the risk of ant predation to the butterfly's offspring, that it inspects the plant and lays the egg with no ants on plants with fewer ants or with no ants? In other words, can egg-laying butterflies visually detect predatory ants and select less risky foliage? So this is the question we are going after. Okay. So before you were born, in my PhD, I did an experiment with an ant exclusion experiment with the piqui. Piqui is the common name, popular name of Carioca, piqui. Okay, so I had 40 plants where ants were able to climb, and 40 plants from which ants were excluded. And on where ants were present, you have decreased number of eggs, and you have decreased number of caterpillars as compared to plants from which ants were excluded. Here are the eggs, this is the larvae. So everyone is following me? Okay. But visiting ants do not remove the eggs. They pass near the eggs are hard, and firmly attached to the foliage. The ants walk near the eggs and they just do nothing. See? Either ants present or ants excluded. This is the number of Eunica eggs where you have ants or not, so it does not interfere. If this is true, why we have decreased number of eggs when ants are present as compared to when ants are excluded? Is it possible that the butterflies are laying their eggs differentially on foliage with or without ants? Okay. Then I told André, you love butterflies. So why don't you study what this butterfly has to do to infest Carioca, where the offspring of the butterfly runs a high risk of predation. And then we use the image of ants. This is a rubber ant. And as a control, we use rubber circles. If our hypothesis was true, we would expect the butterfly to lay eggs preferably on branches, neighboring branches, where you had the circle as opposed to the false ants. And to our delight, this is what they did. They preferably laid the eggs on the foliage that had rubber circles. Well, I presented this talk in Nottingham, in England, the land of Robin Hood. So I proudly presented the talk, and then Mark Elgar, a behavioral ecologist from Australia, a brilliant guy. He raised his arm. Paulo, what the butterfly would do if instead of a rubber ant, you put a rubber grasshopper? I almost collapsed because we haven't thought of that. You showed that the butterfly is avoiding the ant, but could avoid a beetle as well, a herbivore. You just put the ants and you got a positive result, but you didn't exactly show that the butterfly would not avoid another type of insect because you are compared to something that has nothing to do with an insect. I said, oh my God, the guy is right. So Sebastian wrote me from Colombia and said, Paulo, I want to work with you. I said, Sebastian, I have a big problem for you to solve for me. Why don't you study the system of Eunica, butterflies, and ants on Cariocar? And let's not do the thing with false ants. Let's do the thing with true ants. That's Camponotus rufipes, one of our commonest ants. So do Eunica butterflies really detect real ants on foliage? Do they distinguish different types of ants? If so, what cues are used for ant recognition? Because among those 30 ant species that visit the plant, not every ant is aggressive. Some of the ants are in fact very timid. So the butterfly should be able to differentiate potential danger to the offspring, okay? So we went to the Cerrado, Sebastian. 84% of the plants have ants, 70% of which have two types of ants. Two Camponotus species and the so-called turtle ants. Okay, so this one is flattened, the other one are more round. They differ in their appearance, clearly. Okay? So this is the turtle ant. It's small and timid and has a silvery appearance in addition to being flattened. Here are the carpenter ants. The two of them are very aggressive and have a round body different from the turtle ants that are shiny and flattened and spiny as well. Okay? And this shows, so we made experiments of ant versus caterpillar in the lab, and we showed that the two Camponotus species, the large one and the small one, are aggressive and attack the larvae, as opposed to the timid turtle ant that poses a minor threat to the caterpillar, okay? So these are the insects that we used in the field experiments. Two Camponotus species, similar size, similar shape, different size. And this is Cephalotes pusillus, similar size, different shape. Okay? And now I am taking into account the comment by Mark Elgar. We will use a herbivore on the plant to see if the butterflies react differently. Okay? And this is how they treat the ants. Okay. So this is the scenario. No true ants climb on our experimental plants. These are real ants that we dried them in the oven and we put them on foliage so that they look happy with the antennae and with a pin, okay? Pins, we showed, had no effect on butterfly decisions, okay? The butterflies simply do not care about the pins, so that you be aware of this. On the first part of the experiment, we will put one experimental insect on a branch, and on a neighboring branch, we will not put anything, okay? Here's the same, part 2. Now we have treatment 1, one type of insect, treatment 2, another type of insect. Everyone is following me? Okay? Here's the experiment. So we mount the experiment on the field, in the field, and we check where the butterflies choose to lay their eggs 24 hours later. When they have to confront the presence or absence of the herbivore, they simply don't care. They do not discriminate. And they lay their eggs on either branch of our experimental setting. So this is 32 pairs of branches, okay? One with a hemipteran, the other without. With the turtle ant that is timid, they don't care. They lay their eggs irrespective of the presence of turtle ants on foliage. But when we do it with the two aggressive ants, they tend to lay their eggs on the less risky foliage. Okay? So the ant is dead, is pinned on foliage. Okay? So everyone is following. Now the second part. Now we will use two types of insects on neighboring branches. Okay? And we will check the eggs after 24 hours. When the two aggressive butterflies that have different sizes but similar shape are on neighboring branches, they do not differentiate. It's non-significant. When you have the aggressive Camponotus and the same size, the turtle ant that is timid, the butterflies also do not care. But when you have an ant that is big and in different shape of the timid cephalotes, to our delight, they lay their eggs in the less risky foliage. So they use size and shape to differentiate the two types of potential enemies and lay their eggs on the less risky foliage. We were delighted with this. So this is it. Different size, different shape, no discrimination. Different size and shape. Eggs are laid on less risky location. We tend, so, about sensorial capacities of insect herbivores, for Eunica, vision is important. It is able to detect, the butterfly is able to detect ant presence on leaves. But not only that, given two choices where aggressiveness is coupled with a different morphology related to size and shape, the butterfly, to our surprise, is able to differentiate and lays the eggs on the less risky plant location. Okay? Now we'll go to a second story where the butterfly's offspring is benefited by the presence of ants on foliage. So, herbivore that appease ants by offering liquid foods, as you know well, is known as trophobionts. The Cerrado is also the Disneyland of trophobionts. This is Guayaquil. See the ectatoma with a droplet of honeydew within the mandibles. And also butterflies whose larvae attract ants because they have glands that are sugary and attract the ants towards them. And these trophobionts, they gain benefit by being taken care by their ant attendants, okay? And this will be our system. This was part of the Kaminsky PhD under my guidance and under the guidance of André Freitas, the butterfly guy that worked with the orchidea, with the Eunica butterflies. He is now a professor in my department, André Freitas. So, Parrhasius polybetes is a lysennid butterfly that lays her eggs on reproductive branches of Schefflera venosa. Here's the caterpillar being tended by the purple ant that I told you this morning to John. And okay. But the system is so fascinating because it involves the co-occurrence of two ant-based mutualism. So this is the ant-tended caterpillar on Schefflera venosa. It occurs on the same host plant where you have ant-tended Guayaquila schiffias. On the same host plant, you have two ant-based mutualisms, okay? So this is the story we will work on now. So the thesis of Del Claro studied the system using between Guayaquila and ants, and he showed that ants deter the natural enemies of the tree hoppers, deterring parasitoid wasps and spiders from attacking the tree hoppers, okay? So now is our system. If patrolling ants generate an enemy-free space for the tree hoppers, and here's the lysennid larvae nearby, can the tree hoppers that are tending, can the ants that are tending the tree hoppers also tend the lysennid larvae? And if so, can this affect colonization decisions by a gravid butterfly? Everyone understood the question here? So, if the tree hoppers are tended by ants that produce an enemy-free space for the tree hoppers, can this enemy-free space be extended for the nearby caterpillar that is also tended by ants on the same canopy of the shrub? We will work on this now. Okay. So does caterpillar survival improve near ant-tended tree hoppers? The answer is yes. So you have with ant-tended, with ant tree hopper association here, over 15 days. This is when you remove the ant tree hopper association from the plant and the survival of the caterpillar over 25 days. Clearly, the ants that tend the tree hoppers start tending the caterpillar nearby and offer protection in a 3-week period. Everyone followed this? So the presence of tree hoppers on the plant make that the ants find the caterpillar and provide protection, improving caterpillar survival on a plant that is equally infested by the tree hoppers. Everyone understood? Okay. Second question. Do ant tree hopper associations create an enemy-free space for caterpillars? That's our hypothesis. And the answer is yes. Decreased number of spiders on branches with ant-tended tree hoppers as compared to branches on without ant tree hopper association. So this is extended to the nearby caterpillar, and the caterpillar is also protected from spiders and from wasps on the nearby the tree hoppers that are tended by the ants. Okay? Okay? Do butterflies use entry-hopper association as cues to lay their eggs, given that the larvae survive better on a plant canopy that has intended tree hoppers? We would expect a decision opposed to the first case that I showed to you earlier. So this is the question. The butterfly approaches the plant, and we had two experiments. On one group of plants, you have tree hoppers present, on the other, absent. They tend to land on plants where the tree hoppers occur, and they lay more eggs on plants that have entry hoppers association. Okay? Okay? So exactly the opposite behavior that I showed in the first case of the stalk. Okay. Then Luisa came. Paulo, I want to study. She is a butterfly girl. I want to study the system of this Lysennid that infests plants that has tree hoppers on it. And I want to test if they detect visually the tree hoppers and choose to lay the eggs where the tree hoppers are, because there is a premium to that, because the offspring will benefit from the care offered by the ants. And Luisa, so here's the two experiments. Here's the egg of the Lysennid. And here's the pair of branches that we used in our experimental design in the field. So what Luisa did, she used a live entry hoppers association, and she used fake. They are pinned here, so they don't move, and they were washed in a way that they don't have a smell. Okay? So you have the image of an association, of an entry hopper association. You have the image of ants or the image of tree hoppers. She did 4 types of experiments against a control. Okay? And this is it. When you have a live association of ants and tree hoppers against a control where they are not present, the butterfly chooses the branches where you have the association and lay more eggs on branches having the association. Okay? If she makes it a false association with pinned insects, the reaction is the same. The butterfly lays her eggs where the simulated entry hopper association is located. They lay more eggs, and they prefer the branches where this is located. Okay? On the other branch, you have the pins only. If you have only ants, they choose the branches, but the number of eggs do not differ. And when you have only the tree hoppers, the response is not different. So the presence of the ants seems to be a key factor here, because when only the ants are present, there is they show a preference. Okay? So this is the study of Luisa, and she was able to show that vision also plays a role here. And the butterfly tends to lay the eggs where the probability of survival of her offspring is greater, because the ants that are tending the tree hoppers migrate to the branch where the larvae is and take care of the larvae as well. Everyone understood this? Okay. Now, we go to the last case. You know, he is a student of Jean-Philippe Lessard, which you may know. So this is Javier Ibarra Izasi from El Salvador. So he wrote me and came to Brazil to work with me. And then he did his PhD in Canada with Jean-Philippe Lessard, that did his PhD, esqueci o nome. with Nate. Okay, Professor Nate Sanders. Okay, so this is the scenario. We are in the Cerrado. This is Birsonima, and a bee is approaching this inflorescence. And you have flower visiting ants here. Okay? Now let's take a look at this scene more closely. So here's the bee. The ants are here. The bee is after the oil glands. Okay? The ants are here because they are tending tree hoppers. See? That's why the ants are here. The thing is, they threaten approaching bees. Okay. So this is the story. A bee approaches Birsonima after the oil glands on the calyx. On the same region of the plant, the reproductive branch, you have tree hoppers being tended by ants. Okay? And the ants interfere with approaching bees. First question, do tree hoppers affect ant abundance on flowers? Yes. Mean number of tree hoppers on inflorescences, mean number of ants. So the more tree hoppers, the more ants visit the inflorescence. Okay? Does ant presence on flowers affect visitation by potential pollinators? Yes. This is the number of visits by bees. This is the number of ants on the inflorescences. The more number of ants, decreased number of visits on the plants, and decreased duration of visits because the ants harass the bees away from the flowers. So they not only visit less, but the visits last shorter. Okay. Third question, and the more beautiful one. Does ant species identity matter? So first, we had no ants against pin, just a pin. One inflorescence has no ants, and the other has a pin. This is the proportion of effective approaches to flowers. No ants and pin, no difference. Now we pin an ant. This is the proportion of effective approaches to flowers by the bees. You have a significant reaction, different bees, a decreased number of effective approaches occur. And now the beautiful story. If you pin a Nectatoma aggressive ant, it's even less the number of visits to the flower. This is the most aggressive ant visiting this inflorescence. It's always with the mandibles open like this, and the bees avoid it clearly. So the difference from two types of ants, affect the approaching behavior of the bees. Now, the final question. If this is true, and this is the pollinator, do ant-tree hopper associations affect fruit and seed set in Birsonima? The answer is yes. So the ants tending tree hoppers negatively affect the plant because it decreases pollination activity by approaching bees. Okay? So this is our initial question. Does ant presence on Cerrado foliage affect visitation decisions by flying insects approaching foliage? So the first case that I told you today, in an antagonic relationship between ants and the offspring of the of Eunica becchina, showed that butterflies avoid laying eggs near ants. On the second case, where the butterflies where the offspring of the butterflies is benefited by the presence of ants on foliage. They tend to oviposit near ants. And we showed that visual vision is important for this decision. The third story that I told you of an antagonic relationship, see, this is the ectotoma with the mandibles open. We showed that bees tend to avoid visiting ant-occupied inflorescences due to the aggressive behavior of ants that harass the bees, especially this one that is very aggressive, ectotoma. We cannot tell if vision or odor occur here. I hope everyone followed this reasoning here. Okay. So liquid food mediates ant presence on foliage. It affects patterns of colony vegetation and of plant colonization and visitation, and it produces an effect on plant fitness, as we showed with Bersonima on the number of fruits and seeds produced. Okay. So you can look at Cerrado under a tree trophic perspective in which visitors, ants, and affect the plant on which they are interested. Okay. Given that most of this audience is of students, I could not resist and decided to put this as a tropical ecologist. This is the fantastic book by Richard Primack of 2012. Okay. This is what we know, documented in science. Okay, this is 13 years ago. This is what we need to know. The green bars is what we don't know. We are doing more or less with plants and with vertebrates. But this shows our ignorance for the rest of life that occurs on Earth. Okay? So, we have to go to the field. We have to know what animals do, who are they, where they go, what they eat, what time of the day they are active, all the questions, the experimental questions that I showed you today. I showed you 3 questions today with 3 types of interactions. We can only make the experiments because we know what the animals are doing in the field. So we can prepare and design experiments aiming to test the hypothesis that we are interested in testing. We can only do this if we go after the animals and the plants that we like to study, okay? So I will finish with one of my heroes. This is his presidential address in the American Naturalist. We need factual knowledge of organisms to address successfully a host of practical problems, ranging from pest management to conservation. I totally agree with this. We need factual knowledge of organisms, what they do, where they live, where they go, where they mate, where are the enemies, what time the enemies are active, how they avoid the enemies, where they hide, and so on. So we can make, based on this natural history knowledge, we can make experiments to more sophisticated questions that we are fascinated to see how animals solve the problem, for at least the 3 problems that I showed you today. And this is my other hero that lived in Massachusetts that says, if you go outside and pick up the first small organism you see, you will hold in your hand a PhD project. If this is true for Massachusetts, can you imagine for Brazil? Thank you so much.
questions. I'll start with the first question, not to you, but to the grad students in the room. Does anybody know where Doug Fatuma got his PhD? Vandermeer knows. University of Michigan. Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
So, yes. Yeah. Questions?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll run it over.
What's this thing?
Violence is what it is, but
Oh,
it's
this
fine.
is the microphone?
It's a microphone, yeah. Thank you so much for that talk. As someone who's an anthropologist, I barely ever think about animals, let alone insects. But I'm convinced from your evidence that the cues that these flying insects are using is visual. But how do they know to avoid them? Has anyone ever done longitudinal work on, I don't know how you would follow the same butterfly, but do they, across different egg-laying cycles, learn that behavior, or?
That's a wonderful question. So, we want to go after this. So you're asking if a butterfly avoids ants because she learned through life or this is innate, instinctive. I don't know, but I would like to know. So let's imagine that you are a caterpillar and you grew up on a plant that you are harassed all the time by ants. All the time some ant comes and bites you. Is that caterpillar, when it turns, how do you say that in English, becomes a butterfly, will the butterfly avoid ants with a greater probability as compared to another caterpillar who had never been harassed by ants on leaves? This has never been tested. Or the image of ants provides an instinctive rejection by the adult butterfly. I really don't know. This is testable. Did you understand? Was I clear?
That was great.
So the avoidance behavior by the adult butterfly is innate, or can it be learned based on previous negative experience of the caterpillar on a highly ant-visited foliage? Good that you asked it. Thank you. It's testable. It's testable.
Tough question to follow, but any other questions?
Yeah.
Rosie, right here.
Oh, you're not going to throw to me?
You're not.
Thank you, Paulo. So in two of your scenarios, you showed that ant identity matters. But with the lycaenid butterfly scenario, do you know if certain ants are better mutualists of the butterflies? And if so, do you know if
Would
they
they
prefer?
differentiate?
Yeah.
They are, but we did not test.
Okay.
Okay, we used the most common ones. Okay?
Fun stuff.
That's a
All
very
right.
good question. Yes.
If there are no other questions, let's thank Paulo for that very entertaining and excellent talk. Thank you very much.
So Nate told me that we are having drinks somewhere in Ann Arbor.
We are, that's true.
So you guys are all invited. Right?
You are all invited, we're just not telling you where we're going.
I'm sorry. O que você achou?
Foi ótimo. Gostei muito.
Foi? Was it okay? My English was okay?
Oh, yeah, very impressive. Very impressive. Yeah.
My English is rusty now.
Yeah. It was great. Your English is better than my Spanish. I can say that.
Tem certeza? Foi legal?
Eu gostei. Depois eu te conto os feedbacks que eu ouvi por aí.
Já ouviu?
O que eu ouvi.
Ah. Ai, ai.
So when you showed the figure of all of the undescribed species, where most undescribed species are, it's fungi, and we all looked at our fungal taxonomy.
Yes,
Tim
yeah,
James.
I was with him today. Yeah. Yeah, I was with him today. So did you see the green part of the fungi?
It's too small.
How much you have to know?
Yeah, well.
He's trying. He's trying. Yeah.
One mycologist.
Arrasou, muito
Gostou?
bom, muito bom. Aprendi.
Thank you. I hope you guys liked it.